Beat 2, 3, 4. What's the mug, Dylan?
We're going some Yankees baseball.
Okay. So for those of us that aren't really following baseball, how are the Yankees doing this year, by the way?
Listen, it's okay because I'm not either right now. There's like 700 games in a season. I don't really pay attention until certainly until the high school season's done with, and I don't know. There's so many different things in my headspace right now. So
Yes, that is absolutely true.
coaches parting ways with teams, Open Cup champion, Canadian Classique, and the Can Champ, all kinds of stuff going on.
Well,
every week that's not beer sponsored. So
yes, well, and we're getting into a weekend that is not beer sponsored here on the show, but in hour number 1, we got into Open Cup last night, and we also got into the throwing of megaphones in Toronto and fights with ultras and things like that. Yeah. I cannot say I can't say with any great certainty that I have ever had thrown megaphone on my bingo card for an event at a soccer match. And that happened last night at Mark Anthony K.
Yeah, no. You're right. I mean, there's been, unfortunately, there's been bottles and cups thrown. There's been insults hurled.
Yes.
Never a megaphone. And honestly, like for me, like if I'm Mark Anthony K in that situation, I take that megaphone and I probably yell some not so nice things at the people who threw it at me, which maybe gets me fined. I don't know, but.
Well, but and what would have been the ultimate turnaround is if after that megaphone was chucked, that he did go and grab the megaphone, and then he just starts saying things in that megaphone. I've got your somewhere between $54 and $260 purchase, and I'm using it, and I'm yelling at you because you decided to throw it. Yeah. And frankly, that dude doesn't need to be, not Mark Anthony K, but the dude with the megaphone. He doesn't need to be in any stadium, frankly, either in Canada or the United States anymore. And I hope that those who are with him in the supporters group call him out, name who it is, and that his time in watching matches is done.
Yeah, no, that's, almost goes without saying, but yes, 100% true about that. But I was on last night for MLS, so like I had splitting up duties. What was it, eight matches in the U.S. Open Cup, but also I had the Canadian Classique matchup, and listen, I'm a huge Canadian Classique fan. Like I love those games. Everyone talks about LAFC, and it is the best derby right now in the league. And there's some great historical ones as well, and we'll have another one of those as well with the California Classico right on Sunday. But it's just like it's different cultures. It's two cities in any sport who don't like each other. Two cities who just don't like each other, period. So I think it adds to it for sure. And then it's always something wild, right? And even last night, like Montreal comes out in Toronto and just steps all over them, right, in the first half. And probably, if you want to look up definition of how to score on a counterattack, look up their first goal, because it was like perfect. I mean, from the moment of the blocked free kick straight down the field, you score, and then a terrific service from I believe it was Sean Ware to offer, right, and now it's 2-0. And Toronto were probably like 5 seconds away from being booed off the pitch at halftime, if not for an Insigne goal that brings it back. So now you're like, what does that do in the second half? Does it bring it back in the match? Like crazier things have happened between these two, but Montreal did the job. They held on, and I think it's just a perfect. I don't know if it's hard to sort of like. I think a knockout game is more important than a regular season match, right?
Yeah.
But it kind of serves as an appetizer now, right, for Saturday's game, and it switches over to Stade Saputo. So,
Yep. ZBG and Namdio 4 made it 2-0. Asigny makes it 2-1. That's how it wraps up. In Open Cup, we were talking about.
By the way, sorry, John.
Yeah.
This really, like, now the road, and again, just like the Open Cup, the Canadian Championship gives you that ticket to the Champions League, right? So, because that was an all MLS quarterfinal, which is rare, and you had an all Canadian Premier League quarterfinal in the other, which went to PKs, won by it was Ottawa, right? I think beating Forge.
Yep.
Now the door opens wide for Montreal, if they can avoid the cup set, to be 90 minutes away from getting to the Champions League.
Oh, it was the other way. Forge won in frame 6. They won in the sixth.
Right. Forge. So yeah, that's right. Forge took the lead, and then Atletico Ottawa. Or Atletico Ottawa.
Yes.
Pulled it back, and then they went to PKs and Forge won. Yeah, but not the most. You were about to talk about the Open Cup, but not the most dramatic PK situation. A couple good ones in the Open Cup last night.
Well, but LAFC can't get out of their own way, man. I mean, we talked about their lineup last night and the average age, and I'm sure that the keeper boosted that year average 21.7.
I was going to say it was not a drinking legal drinking age average.
No. And so now that Chirondolo drives the bus, or he's the one who is the chaperone in charge of everybody to make sure everything's okay. But
everybody got Happy Meals after the game. And
yes, they absolutely did. And I mean, they can't get out of their own way in trying to prepare for Champions League, because they end up winning in PKs, and they're on to the round of 16 by beating Monterey Bay.
Yeah, no. And listen, they had it. It was wrapped in a bow in at the end of regulation, right? All they had to do was just hold on. And then Monterey Bay levels, and then it's U.S. Open Cup After Dark, which I think Cup After Dark generally trumps MLS After Dark.
Yeah, I mean, because you had Clint Irwin.
That was one of the ones I was on. For me, that was the match of the night. That you had so much in that match. I mean, I'm not even going to begin to try to. You can pronounce his name from Minnesota.
Longwane.
Scores he looked like the greatest player in MLS history with his goals, and then the assist. And now Colorado looks like they're running away, and then Kai Wagner pulls them back twice. This was it was, and maybe this is just Philly. Maybe they just play this way, but this is reminiscent of MLS Cup, right? Where twice at the death, sudden. Although it was the other way around, right? Where LAFC pulled back, but this was, one goal better than the next, and now it goes to PKs. And when Blake makes the first save, oh, that's it. It's going to be Phillies, and then Irwin makes a save, and then he makes another one, and incredible stuff in that one, Colorado Philly, and you got to imagine at some point, Jim Curtin, maybe in the 108th minute, was we don't really need this.
No,
couldn't we have, even if we lost in regulation, could we have just gone 90? Do we need 120 and PKs?
That's what I'm thinking. Chirondolo's thinking the same thing too.
But at least he rolled out a U10 team.
Yes, that is absolutely true. And but yeah, it was crazy. I mean, Longwane on the first one, where he goes screaming down the left-hand side, pulls the air brake not once but twice.
Yeah.
And gets it in for his first goal. And he came in as a sub and gets 2 and is active in all 3. And then there was the moment when it was 3-2, and you have the injury on the near side, and it didn't even look like a legit injury. And so the physios are treating the player off the pitch, and they're looking at him, and then you get the throw, and then it's like you're a man down because they're treating the injury, and then you end up with the equalizer. And you're going, what is going on here?
I think the only thing that you missed in that one, like that would have just brought it full circle, is if somehow a dog runs on the pitch, right? Like that's the only thing you were missing in that one. But then again, that's more CONCACAF than
Yes,
Open Cup. But
that's true. Or was it in Finland where the kid came on the tricycle recently?
Right, right.
I mean,
but that, yeah, I mean, that was such a fun one. And then you had cup sets,
yeah.
right?
I mean, I mean, you had Inter Miami with the 3 bumper goal to give them the win over Charleston, and
Yes.
then Bob Lilly over New England 1-0. So Bob Lilly and Bruce Arena, who to me just seem like two of the grumpiest old dudes on any, and this is like independent of each other. I mean, if you watch USL Championship and you're watching the Pittsburgh Riverhounds at Highmark, by the way, cool venue right on the river. And Bob Lilly just seems like nothing is going right for him. It's like he had to, his car died on the drive to the stadium, and he was in the middle of nowhere, and he's called for an Uber, and the first Uber won't satisfy everything because he's packed for the game and everything. You know, he's got the balls in the back and the cones and all of the. So the first Uber comes, and it's like a compact car, and it's not going to fit everything. And so Lilly's has to order the Uber all over again. And he finally gets the van that he needs to get to the game. And then he's just surly the entire time. And this is on
the driver's just constantly talking to him, and he's like, I don't really want to talk. He's like, please give me 5 stars. Like,
yes. And that's what and then Lilly shows up at the game. And this is on a daily basis. This is on a game by game basis. Bob Lilly never looks happy. And then you have Bruce Arena for New England, who never looks happy. And so you had 2 guys who never look happy, regardless of what's happening out there on the field for their team. And so you have 2 unhappy guys whose teams are playing each other, and you end up with Pittsburgh getting the win at Gillette. Are you kidding me? And I still think Bob Lilly is going to be upset about it.
Sure. I mean, he had to go on the road, right? It's a late night. Maybe he doesn't like Patriot Place too much. Who knows? Maybe the restaurant was closed by the time he was done.
It's like, I was looking forward to going to Toby Keith's, and now you tell me it's closed. And now it's like, so how
that's a good spot. That's a good shout right there. That's I've been to Patriot Place a bunch. That's a good shout right there.
And so now Bob Lilly moves on in the round into the round of 16, and it was absolutely crazy. And you end up with new coach bounce, which we'll get into now, because you end up with Red Bulls getting a win. You end up with Chicago getting a win under new guys, unless you call Frank Klopas a new guy for the 3rd time. New coaches in Chicago and Red Bulls who got wins last night in Open Cup, and it's new coaches for different reasons now, staring at teams that are moving on to the round of 16.
Yeah. And you know what? I think I kind of feel like that was a perfect situation at Red Bull, because you were looking at the possibility, and it will be the first MLS match, but you were looking at a Hudson River Derby match as your first one in charge, with, not like NYCFC are world beaters right now, but they're certainly in better form than Red Bull, right? So to get that win over an old foe in DC, that's got to feel really good, right? Going into that match. It was interesting to hear. It was actually really weird, looking back at the press releases and the press conferences. It started with Struber just sort of being like, this was going to be in the mix, and missed my family, and it wasn't a great situation, so I'm out. Of course, nothing to do with results, right? Like, it's not like you guys have struggled, or nothing to do, of course, with the way that you handled a really bad situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes out a little bit more about, this the results weren't what we wanted, and then
Mhm.
and then uh, and then the admission to that, this is who we're going with the rest of the year. So uh, no MLS experience, lower level experience, but he's familiar with the team and the group, and he's been there for since what, 2012? No, 2020. Sorry, 2022.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't know. Who knows what to make of this. I was having a joke on our Slack channel with the other editors, like they should just do like an alumni coaching committee,
Mhm.
and have John Walniak and have like Amado Guevara and like have a whole bunch of dudes, like you know. Although I mean the one that would have really been awesome was if Thierry Henry came
Oh.
back. Um, and then you look forward to the Atlantic Cup, Henry and Rooney like
Oh.
on the touchline. That would be
Oof.
fun. But
Oh, and
c'est la vie, as he would probably say.
or well, it might be closer to C'est la guerre in that case if you're chasing after a cup. Then in Chicago, Black Monday continued
Yeah,
with Ezra Hendrickson getting fired, and it was just that one. You're
that's
sitting,
more surprising.
you're going now. Really, you seriously? Uh, Ezra, because of what's, I mean, the issues, and we went over the salary figures, and somebody is standing out like a sore thumb in the salary structure of Chicago Fire, and the rate of return versus amount of outlay for Big Shaq. It's like 7.8 million, I think base, and you ain't getting nothing from him, and all in the front office moves. Yeah, great. You sold Slanina, you sold Duran, but you haven't invested that money back and gotten anything in return. This seems more above Ezra Hendrickson than it does Ezra Hendrickson.
Listen, the roster isn't a roster that can compete in MLS, right? Like, well, at least with Red Bull, if you go with like the nerdy stat kind of stuff, like their XG and all that kind of stuff, like their expected goals were high,
Mm-hmm.
and they weren't getting those goals. So that's performance based, right?
Right.
Chicago, it's more of, yeah, this is who they kind of are.
Mm-hmm.
Like their roster isn't a playoff caliber roster.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is that Ezra Hendrickson building it exclusively? No, of course not.
Yeah.
So you're right in that sense, and um, obviously the scapegoat here, right? Like, and even that said, and listen, this game is about close moments and little things that change games. But how many of these games now where they were a minute away from getting 3 points or getting a point, right? Like, and he was obviously incredibly frustrated a couple of weeks ago, maybe realizing the heat was on, detailing the inability to defend on these late corners,
Yep.
right? And 3 matches where, if they get points from those, if they clear that ball in those situations, they go from below the playoff line to like 4th or 5th.
Mm-hmm.
So you do feel for him. Seemed like he was a well-liked coach in general. But yeah, on the leaderboard of, and we've spoke about it a few times, on the leaderboard of hot seats.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised about Struber, but I am surprised with Ezra. I didn't see him as like one of the top 2 or 3 to go.
Mm-mm. And Jason Nix is asking, does Ezra getting sacked affect the U20 releases, do we think?
I don't know.
And that's the thing. It's like, it just completely depends. I know it's.
I will say this. I will say this though about the U20. Generally, like I think these players should be released, and I think it should be a FIFA thing.
Yeah.
Like it's not the World Cup, but it's an aged World Cup, And it's a significant age, right? We're not talking about like the U17s or like this is a U20 World Cup. I think these guys should be released, and in the Olympics too. Like this is ridiculous that you know this isn't a situation where players, where you have to release them. So I feel like that's something that should change in the future.
Yeah, Caleb Wiley is. I saw that Aronson is not from.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like it's so hard to. It's a club by club determination. Like it shouldn't be that way.
And so you're sitting there, and it's like, what do you think best would benefit the growth of the player? And it makes sense that it would sit there and say they need to go to the U20 World Cup to represent their country. And it's looking like right now that with the yeses, the yeses and the nos and the maybes, that the United States will not be sending their best group, their best starting 11, best 18. It will not be 1 through 18 that will be going to this U20 competition as of right now, and that is the only detriment to that, other than to your country's result, is to those players who would love to have this experience, would love to represent their country, and at the same time would have that on their resume. Hey, man, look what I've been able to do, and it helps the player, and it would help the team financially if you want to move the player on at any given point.
Well, that was the point I was about to say. 100%, right? Like so, especially for the MLS teams. It's been detailed, and there's so many great examples. And you mentioned Slonina before, right? Like of you develop your young talent, and you sell them off to usually a European based team.
Yeah.
These scouts are watching the U20 World Cup, right? Like you've got a better chance of selling that player off by having them showcase in a World Cup than you do, on a Tuesday night in Charlotte.
Because I mean, if you're at the U20 World Cup and you're watching all of those dudes, I mean, legitimately. All right, so where is the U20 World Cup? Do you know off the top of your head as I sit here and search for it really quickly while you get
I do know. Sorry.
Well, keep going. Keep sipping with the. Let's see. So U20 World Cup, where is it going to be? Argentina. That's right, because it got reassigned. So it's in Argentina. If you are in the 2023 U20 World Cup, and you're in Argentina, and you're a big muckety muck for an international club, what is going to make you think, regardless of the league we're talking here, that insert soccer executive extraordinaire who is in Argentina watching the U20 World Cup is going to sit there, grab their mobile device, and go, I think I'll dial up MLS Season Pass, and I'll watch the players that, no, that is not going to be the case.
Well, what it is, though, John, it's that it's like that next level confirmation.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're already dialing up MLS Season Pass, and they already have an idea of these younger guys, right? Like you mentioned Wiley before, right? Or a Cowell, right? Yeah. In San Jose, they already have that film,
right?
But now I haven't seen him in an international competition on the biggest stage. How do they perform there?
Yeah.
And that's just again added affirmation, added like that's likely what would get a player over the top. You play really well in the World Cup, you're good to go.
You get those chances. I think the Union players have been cleared to go. Caleb Wiley's been cleared to go, but like I said, the biggest name for me that hadn't been cleared was Aronson, and I'm like, excuse me, and it's just it made less than no sense. But once again, not necessarily a surprise sometimes when it comes to folks and understanding the larger picture. You mentioned the rivalry that is beer sponsored, but not on the show. And
I don't think it's even beer sponsored off the show. I don't know. I think it's.
Did they pull it away finally? And it's just like, because not every game is tied to a rivalry this week, although there are some. Your Canadian your Can Champ matchup that had the thrown megaphone is going to get a rematch this weekend at Stade Saputo now, where I don't know if they could throw the bell. I think that'd be kind of
That's
cumbersome.
pretty heavy.
If things continue to go south for Toronto, where is Bob Bradley on the heatometer, you think? Is he still like locked in, cool? MLSC's like, do your thing, we'll just spend more money. Where do you think Bob Bradley is right now?
Oh, that's a great question. Like, I don't know if he's had. I don't know. It's a tough one because on one side I'm wrestling with this because on one side I'm like, has he had enough time to build his roster up?
Right. Yeah.
Right. It wasn't very good before he got there. And then I kind of feel like, their biggest signings were a little bit above his head, right? Like, hey, Bob, here's who we're getting.
Yeah.
So, but also, similar, kind of similar to Shaq in Chicago. When you sign those guys, like now you're putting so much money into those two guys that it's less everywhere else, right?
The back line.
100%. And that hasn't been. Now he does wear two hats.
Yeah.
So he is a decision maker here. How much is he hamstrung financially because of the two other guys? I mean, it's a good question. But you're right. Their most pressing need in the preseason is still their most pressing need, and it was a pressing need last season. So,
yeah.
I would think, like, I hate to see guys go, like, get 2 years and you're out, or but yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, they've made quicker decisions.
Yeah.
In Toronto before, right? We saw that with Armas. So
yeah. I mean, if it's not quite Ty Willingham and Notre Dame, but but once again, it speaks to folks that want to spend money and having cap space and all this kind of other stuff before you go.
I would have had Lasana on that hot seat if not for this most recent run of form.
Absolutely. Other rivalries, you've got Copa Tejas with Austin hosting Dallas. And you've also got Cali Classico this weekend as your Sunday night game on FS1.
Derby.
Peter Vermes got the stay. Once again, the reason that you should never bet on Major League Soccer.
I always say that.
And he goes and thumps Seattle. And obviously we'll have Nico Moreno later on in the week to talk about it from the Seattle perspective. But Peter Vermes gets the stay. You talk about guys with more than one role.
Yeah.
Peter Vermes is like, okay, you're last. You're hanging around there with LAG at the bottom of the West. Oh, by the way, I'm just going to, thump Seattle and make the whole thing more confusing in Kansas City.
Yeah, and listen, a couple things for him, right? He had all his DPs on the field for the first time since 2021. They all contributed to goals in this one. Eric Tommy finally gets a goal. Alan Polito gets his first goal in the league since 2021.
1974, Alan Polito.
He did score in the Open Cup. And what does that do for them, right? Like, and listen, this is a forgiving league. If you can reel off 4 straight wins in this league, suddenly you go from worst to probably playoff line or above. So, he said in his post-match press conference, listen, I've preached patience here and I believe in our guys and they haven't given up and all that kind of fun stuff. But they needed a result, right? Like you can do all those things, but there needs to be the reward at the end of it. And they did get that and kind of one of the more unlikely places to get it, but they got it.
No doubt. What's up with OSDB and with MLSsoccer.com?
Good question. I mean, it's just it's more of the
high school.
Yeah, I have a girls lacrosse game tomorrow night where I have a call with one coach today at 1, and the other coach I've not heard from yet. So
been there.
That could be an interesting one. And then I have a big one on Saturday. It's called Reegs Rock. It's between Chaminade and Manhasset, and it's really cool because it's in memory of Sergeant James Regan, who was a Manhasset resident who played at Chaminade. He then went on and played at Duke. 9/11 happened, and he said, "I got to go. I've got a different calling here." He went into the Army Rangers, and ultimately, gave his life for his country. So it's one of those really cool games where it's important for the next generation of players to remember that his jersey number wasn't retired, but it's given to a guy in his memory each year at Chaminade, which is also a pretty cool thing. So that'll be a fun one on Saturday. It's always one of the more meaningful games on the Long Island lacrosse calendar. So that'll be a good one on Saturday at 2 on Varsity Media on YouTube.
What he said, because I was going to say Varsity Media on YouTube. Dylan, as always, Dylan_Butler on the Twitters. We will catch up with you and get the full high school update, the full MLS update for rivalries that are no longer sponsored by beer, that have a red
coffee, maybe.
There you go. And as he continues to sip from his Yankees mug, we'll catch up with you next week, my friend.
All right, buddy.